thruster maneuvers, but the manual piloting capability for the fly-around maneuver will not be possible. So it's really up to the Dragon and its computers to make that full loop. And again, it's really just an hour and a half long.
Go for the LIO steps.
And Endeavour SpaceX, we can give you a go for step 3.1. You are go to complete LIO configuration, IMV teardown, and hatch closure per procedure 2.103. And reminder, we are going to be using LIO cartridge 2.
Copy LIO cartridge 2 and all the rest you said. Thanks a bunch.
All right, continuing to configure that Dragon for its departure. For the past 6 months, Dragon has been relying on the ECLSS, or environmental control systems, of the International Space Station. Hatches have pretty much been open, and they have access to it, and they've been able to circulate some air through the pressurized mating adapter. But now the Dragon is departing, and it has to rely on its own systems. And of course, the LIO canisters, the lithium hydroxide, those have the very, very important environmental control capability of scrubbing carbon dioxide from the cabin of the Dragon.
Yeah. One thing I want to point out while we have this shot, you can see there in the center where that circle is, so that is the hatch for the nose cone. That's actually the window that they'll be taking photos from. So while that hatch is currently open, we can, looks like we got some waves there. You can actually see the window itself where the crew will be taking photos from during the fly-around procedure, as Gary mentioned before.
There are a couple of positions that that the crew themselves can be in. It'll be up to, you can see the window itself is pretty small, and they'll have a handheld DSLR camera to be able to take photos. And it's completely up to their comfort level on what position they decide to be in. They're in space, so they don't really need to worry about up or down. So you can see them in essentially the same orientation that they are in now, just essentially putting their feet towards the where the cargo is, and heading out that way. They also have the ability, if they desire, to flip completely upside down and hang their feet on the seats themselves. It might provide a better angle. Who knows? This will be the first fly around for Dragon.
SpaceX for display alpha.
Go ahead.
Hey Shane, we're going to go ahead and have you cycle the power to display alpha. We are still investigating potential causes on the ground, but we'd like to start with this step.
Okay, and that's just turning the display off and on the touchscreen. Is that it, or is there something bigger than that?
We're going to actually power cycle it using the display power button in the control panel.
Copy that. Some work.
And we're seeing that procedure happen real time now. A simple power cycle is what you and I do at home whenever our laptop is not working. We turn it off and on again. A very simple fix, but they'll analyze to make sure that display is working for them.
For the power cycle.
Yeah, let's crank them back up now. I'll let you know what you see.
On the left, you're getting a view from inside Mission Control Hawthorne. That's the core position, essentially the same as the Capcom position in Mission Control Houston. The voice from Mission Control Hawthorne up to the crew inside Dragon. Behind the displays, you can see Tomás Pесque, mission specialist. He'll be flanking Sheyne Kimbro and Megan Макартур. Him and Akihiko Hошид, both the mission specialists for the Crew-2 mission.
On display alpha.
SpaceX copies, still stale data on display alpha. We are going to continue looking at this on the ground, and I'll have more words for you shortly.
Endeavour copies.
What you're hearing is the communications from the core here in Mission Control Hawthorne up to the Endeavour crew. Just getting Dragon configured. It's going to be about 2 hours from now until they physically separate or undock from the International Space Station's Node 2 Harmony port on the zenith or space-facing side. Getting some views of the Earth now. They'll be able to see a lot of that during their journey. Again, about over the course of 8.5 hours, they'll see a few sunrises and sunsets. So we'll see what happens during the fly-around maneuver, fly-around. Again, we'll take about an hour and a half. We have a lot coming up. We're just about 5 minutes away from the scheduled hatch closure period.
And Endeavour LIO changeout 1709.
Copy, LIO changeout at 1709.
And they're changing out those lithium hydroxide canisters, making sure they have fresh canisters able to scrub carbon dioxide for the journey home. So that will start about 5 minutes from now when they close the hatches. It'll take some time until they actually physically undock from the International Space Station, because there are about 3 hatches that separate the International Space Station crew from the Dragon crew. The first hatch that they'll close, we're seeing it in the background when we got that over-the-shoulder view from inside Dragon, but that was the forward hatch of the Dragon. That is the Dragon hatch. On the other side of that is something called the A-Pass hatch. That's essentially the this is about where Mark Vande Hei is right now. He's pretty much facing it. It's the hatch on the station side in between, which is called the vestibule. That's the part that'll be depressurized down to vacuum before they actually physically separate. Mark Vande Hei's important job right now.
Putting hatch closure in work.
There you go. Hatch closure is just moments away.
SpaceX copies. Hatch closure in work.
Love to hear that.
And again, that'll be the first hatch, Dragon hatch. Once that's closed, we'll wrap up our coverage and allow the crew some time to close the remaining hatches. The A-Pass being another station hatch that creates the vestibule that would be depressurized. The part that you see Mark Vande Hei in right now, that won't be depressurized. That's the pressurized mating adapter. But on towards the screen a little bit is the Node 2 hatch, Node 2 Zenith or space-facing hatch. That's the third hatch that'll be closed. From there, Mark Vande Hei will move over to the cupola, and it'll be his job to monitor Dragon's departure as well as the fly-around maneuver, and he'll remain in that position until they exit the approach ellipsoid. There's 2 imaginary circles around the International Space Station. One of them is the keep-out sphere. That's about what they'll hover for the fly-around maneuver, about 180 to 220 meters, or roughly that 40-meter stretch, and just really circle around the International Space Station. And then about a kilometer away.
Closed, PPRV ISO valve is open.
Awesome.
SpaceX copies. Hatch closed and PPRV ISO valve is in the expected position.
All right, so good news there, hearing that the hatch has been closed. On your screen now, a live view of Dragon. The first time we're seeing it this morning. The Crew-2 crew there is on station. They're now inside Dragon. Crew Dragon that you see on your screen there, that is Dragon Endeavour, as you hear them call out during these communications back and forth from station to ground. So super exciting milestone we've been waiting for the last few minutes.
Very exciting. So now that Dragon's hatch is closed, Shane Kimbro and Megan Макартур will finish configuring the Dragon cabin, and of course they already have their suits donned. Akihiko Hoshin and Tomas Pesque will put on their suits and get in their seats ready for undocking 2 hours from now.
Yeah, no, I love these suits. The suit's primary function is to protect the crew in the event of a cabin depressurization. If that were to occur, the suit would inflate to provide a habitable environment long enough for the crew to return home.
Endeavour MS1 and MS2 are getting their suits on.
All right, so call up there that Aki and Toma
SpaceX copies. MS1, MS2 getting suited.
Are both suiting up. The flame-resistant materials on the outer layer of the suit would also protect the crew in the unlikely event of a fire.
So again, the first hatch is closed, the Dragon hatch. In a few minutes, the APAS hatch on the station side will be closed. APAS is an acronym that stands for Androgynous Peripheral Attachment System, so you can see why we use the acronym. It's an integral part of the docking system. But before closing it, Van de Hei, again, you saw him attaching a docking target that'll be used to fine-tune the alignment for an approaching spacecraft, not something required for undock, but would obviously need to be there for the next spacecraft docking to this port, which in this case will be CRS-24, the SpaceX cargo craft.
Now, once both the Dragon and APAS hatches have been closed, depressurization of the vestibule will begin. The vestibule, as Gary mentioned before, is the area between Dragon and the station's docking port that will be exposed to the vacuum of space following undocking. It's been filled with air that originally came from the station's atmosphere and will be brought down to vacuum for undocking. If this wasn't done, breaking the seal between Dragon and the station would result in a fairly propulsive burst of air.
So again, we have the APAS hatch close coming up, and then while we're off air, the vestibule will depressurize. That's at about 9:40 a.m. Pacific. It'll take some time once they actually bring it down to vacuum. They pause at about 5 psi to do a leak check. That's expected about 10:40 a.m. Pacific, and then of course they'll configure the Dragon for both fly around and for undocking. We'll be back to provide some coverage right before they do the final go, no go for undocking, and then the undocking sequence starts at about 11 o'clock a.m. Pacific. It takes about 5 minutes once that sequence starts to undo the hooks, and then there's a couple burns that'll happen to actually physically separate.
For awareness, we are going to clear the inactive onboard alert from the display alpha power cycle.
Okay, thank you.
All right, they're continuing to work that display, making sure it's ready to undock 2 hours from now. Again, that physical separation is 11:05 a.m. Pacific. Looks like Mark Van de Hei is taking some photos. There is that window, the same window that the crew will use to take photos of the International Space Station during the fly-around, sending some final photos and final goodbyes to the crew there.
It is a pretty small window that they have to look out, as we saw earlier, while the crew was ingressing. So I'm sure that the waves through the window are these little mini waves. But like we said before, pilot Megan Макартур and Commander Sheyne Kimimbra are both suited up and in their seats. Mission specialists Akihiko Hosид and Tomas Pesque are now donning their suits as well, or putting their suits on, and they will be preparing to get in their seats and buckle up. After that, of course, prior to departure, there's going to be some suit leak checks, and that's when we basically pressurize the suits to make sure that all of the zippers and all the fasteners are in place so that the suit can hold pressure, which is, like we said before, in the unlikely event of an emergency, the suit would act like a mini environment to keep the crew safe.
Very important during the dynamic phases of the flight, and that includes the undocking. But again, the Dragon hatch is closed. So now that Dragon hatch is closed, the crew is preparing to depart, and we're going to take a short break before we get ready for undocking to allow all of that vestibule depressurization, all the hatches to be closed, and we'll come back. Our live coverage will pick back up at 10:45 a.m. Pacific, about 15 minutes before the undock command is sent to the Dragon and gets ready to physically separate from the station.
Yeah. Once we undock, we will stay live with you the entire time until Dragon splashes down off the coast of Florida later today, which is on target for today, Monday, November 8th, at 7:33 p.m. Pacific, or 3:33 GMT. So don't go anywhere. We'll see you soon as Crew 2 gets ready to leave the International Space Station.
hand, I have a feather. In my right hand, a hammer. And I guess one of the reasons we got here today was because of a gentleman named Galileo a long time ago who made a rather significant discovery about falling objects in gravity fields. And we thought that where would be a better place to confirm his findings than on the moon. And so we thought we'd try it here for you. The feather happens to be appropriately a falcon feather.
Today, a crew of 2 Americans, 1 European, and 1 Japanese astronaut will set off on a 6-month science mission to the world's only orbiting laboratory.
At 5:49 this morning Eastern Time, NASA astronauts Sheyne Kimbro, Megan Макартур, European Space Agency astronaut Tomas Pesque, and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency astronaut Akihiko Hoshiide will lift off from Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center as part of the agency's Commercial Crew program. This crew will relieve the 4 Crew-1 astronauts who have been living and working on station since November. This will be the first time that SpaceX reuses both a first stage and a Crew Dragon capsule. This booster supported the Crew-1 mission, and the capsule, Dragon Endeavour, flew astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley to the space station in last year's history-making Demo 2 test flight. There we have our first look inside the suit-up room at the Neil Armstrong O&C building. We can see the astronauts have gotten into their suits and are now working with SpaceX suit technicians and the closeout team, SpaceX suit closeouts for doing checks on the umbilicals for, looks like they're getting ready to get into their chairs.
This is such a historic room that anyone who walks in it, whether you're an astronaut or not, you just feel like you're catapulted in time to a period where this all began.
And there's a view of Megan Макартур being helped by the suit technicians. She happens to be the wife of Bob Behnken, and she's going to be flying in the same spacecraft in the same seat as her husband in the pilot seat. But, of course, she's got her own custom-made suit on.
Yep, all of these suits were designed in-house at SpaceX. We took safety, comfort, and style all into account. That's our commander, Sheyne Kimbro, and he's basically sitting in a mock-up of the chair that he will be seated in inside Crew Dragon. So while they're seated inside Crew Dragon, they actually have an umbilical plugged into their suit that flows cool air through the suit to keep them cool and comfy, as well as communications umbilicals and power. So it's really important to make sure that we do these fit-ups here so that there really aren't any surprises once we get into Dragon capsule out on the pad.
And the helmets that they're wearing are also custom printed using 3D printing technology. So that's a really exciting technological advancement since the shuttle days. In the room shot we saw just a minute ago, and there's Megan Макартур getting helped into her gloves in her spacesuit. But we saw, if we could take the wide shot of that room, we saw another astronaut. There it was in the foreground, number 38. That's Jessica Meir. She is a member of the pad closeout team. So we'll see her here in the suit-up room, and she'll also be headed to the white room a little later to provide crew support. And here they come, the Crew-2 astronauts taking their first steps outside before their journey to space.
Yay!
I love this moment. They're now going to have the opportunity to wave goodbye from a safe distance. The distance is normal protocol for spaceflight this is not a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. This would be in place even if we didn't have that situation going on. But I love this moment. It's a wonderful opportunity to see the astronauts get some final farewells from their friends and family members.
And we've got Shane and Megan to the right of your screen, Toma and Aki to the left.
There's Shane's wife.
Shane and his wife posing for a socially distanced photo.
Yes.
And it looks like Bob Behnken is there in a blue polo with the son of he and Megan Macarthur. Yeah, there's a better shot of Bob, Megan, and their son. What an experience as their son to do this twice.